Strike of the Eagle by Academy Games. This is a block war game, first in the Fog of War series. This game depicts the war between Soviet Russia and Poland in 1920, a time when the Russian Revolution had a lot of momentum, and Stalin and Trotsky thought that it would be a good idea to export communism to Western Europe. To do that, they had to go through Poland, and Poland said thanks, but no thanks. Hence the war that is represented in this game. This is a block war game, as I said. But there are also other elements besides the block that really create an intense sense of fog of war. The title of the series is appropriate. Because of this game is probably less solitaire friendly than many other block war games, but if you're playing it with other players, of course, a lot of interesting situations and dilemmas do arise. This is a game for 3, 4, or 2 players, and I have to say that it is true. There are war games that are advertised for 2, 3, 4 players, and then you realize that if you play them with more than 2 people, they don't work very well. This game I have played with 2 players, 3 players, and 4 players, and all the modes work equally well. The game is set up in a smart way so that all players have something to do and they're always part of the action. Okay, enough for the intro. Let's see how the game plays. This is the map for the game. It is a mounted map and it is a thing of beauty. Maybe you see it from this distance here, it just looks a little chaotic, but it is not. It is just beautiful. I feel like they should have sent it to a poet to really do it justice. Look at the detail, at the nice illustrations. Just so detailed and pleasant. I mean, the map is so nice that some cities have unique illustrations. How cool is that? The game comes with a healthy selection of scenarios that you can play. Victory is based on getting victory points, and different scenarios may have different ways in which you can gain points, but there are also some standard ways of gaining victory points, ways that apply to all scenarios. For example, taking control of key cities gives you victory points, and the number of points that the city is worth is printed there in that yellow circle. Also, playing certain event cards can give you victory points. Winning large battles in which you inflict a lot of damage on the opponent gives you victory points. And also, you can get points by eliminating enemy units because they cannot retreat or when they are out of supply. Each player will receive an initial hand of cards based on the scenario instructions. These cards can be played in different moments during an operation phase, and they can be played for one of 4 things. They can be played to generate reinforcement cubes. You get cubes corresponding to the number and color of the cubes printed at the bottom of the card, and then at the end of a round, those will generate reinforcements. You can use the card for the printed text and the different types of cards, reaction, historical events, battle cards. You can use a card at the beginning of an operation phase for the blue number, which represents extra orders that you receive. During an operation phase, you have a default amount of 2 orders that you can issue, plus whatever is the number represented by the blue number if you decided to commit a card to that function, or you can use a card later in a turn for the red number, which is then added to your total strength during a battle. But you can always only play a card for one of the things printed on it. The map is divided in 2 fronts, northern front and southern front. Fronts are separated by this line here that runs across the entire map. Each front has a separate initiative that will be recorded on this player aid here. Initiative may belong to the Polish player or the Soviet player. The player with initiative loses a level of initiative when he loses a battle, so if the player is level 1, the initiative will go to the other player, and the player with initiative gains a level of initiative if he wins a battle in which he inflicts more damage on the opponent than the current level of initiative. Southern front, the Soviet player wins a battle inflicting 3 or 4 points of damage, then the Soviet player gains a level of initiative, which simply makes it easier to retain initiative. And having initiative is simply crucial in many aspects of the game. The player who has initiative chooses which player starts placing orders on the board, and the player who has initiative also chooses who goes first when it is time to resolve each type of order. Starting with the player selected by the initiative player, players alternate placing orders on the board. Orders are represented by these markers here that are placed face down on the unit or group of units that is going to resolve that order later in the operation phase. Each turn you receive a default number of 2 orders. To that number you can add extra orders if you play a card to do so. But no matter how many orders you resolve, one of them always must be the recon order, represented by this symbol here. And the recon order does not allow you to move. That means that unless you are getting extra orders in a turn, you will be able to execute only one move order. Once all orders have been placed on the board, you resolve them in the order in which you see them here on the player aid, and the initiative player chooses who resolves each type of order first. First, resolve all forced march orders. Units can be forced marched to the location where you place the order, or they can be moved from the location where you place the order. Units that forced march move 1 extra location, so cavalry units can move up to 3 locations and infantry units up to 2, but then these units fight at half of their strength points rounded down, and that can be a devastating penalty. Then you execute recon orders. So you can look at enemy blocks in the location where you place that order. Then you execute move orders. Again, move can be to or from a location. Cavalry moves up to 2 locations. Infantry moves 1 location, but then these units can fight normally. And then you execute withdraw orders. A group that withdraws loses a strength point, but that group can move away from an area that also contains enemy blocks, and that means an area where next you would have to resolve a battle. This is because when units move, they have to stop when they enter areas containing enemy blocks, but they also pin an equal number of enemy blocks. So if you want to evacuate an area, but the opponent moves in units before you do so, then all or some of your blocks will be pinned there unless you play the withdraw order. So you lose a strength point if you play that order, but you play because you're afraid that you will lose much more if you had to go through a real battle, through an entire battle. Then you resolve the battles in locations that contain blocks belonging to both players, and then you execute reorganize orders. One of your units reintegrates a strength point that was lost, and then you execute rail transport orders. Up to 4 units can move up to 8 locations as long as those locations are in supply and connected by railroad. Combat is diceless, and it is really kind of awesome. I'll tell you about it using this example here of an attack where the Poles are coming from 3 directions against that Soviet city. In a battle, each player has to calculate his total combat strength. That is represented by the total of the strength points of the units present in battle, 12 for example here for the Polish player, but then you have different things that will modify that total. For example, you may have cards that are played for their battle effect. Suppose the Soviet player plays this card and the Pole suffers minus 1 strength penalty for each of his blocks in the battle. Ouch, this would be a minus 3. If the attacker is coming from multiple directions, the defender has a penalty of minus 2, a flanking penalty for each direction after the first one. The Pole is coming from 3 directions, that is 2 after the first one, minus 4 for the Soviet player. Unless there are fortifications around the city and all of the attacking units attack through fortifications, then the defender can ignore 1 flanking penalty. In this case, for example, there are 2 flanking penalties, only 1 applies because of the fortifications, so it is only minus 2 for the Soviet player. If a city has a garrison, the garrison adds 1 strength point to the side that the garrison belongs to. And then each player must play a card for its red value and must add that value to the total combat strength. You may play a card for its red value out of your hand, so you're spending one of your precious resources, but not only do you get to choose the card that you play, but also you add +1 to the combat strength that is generated by that card. If you do not have cards, or you do not want to spend them, then you can always draw a random card from your deck, but then you have to accept the result. There you go. This is not that good because you have to accept the result and there are no modifiers. This card is just +1 to your strength point in combat. Once you have the total combat strength of both players, you look at this table and you see how much damage the players inflict on one another. A player has 10, 11, or 12 strength points, then it is 3 points of damage, 7, 8, or 9 in combat value, then it is 2 points of damage. The points of damage may be modified by several factors. Fortifications allow the defender to ignore a strength point that has been lost. Defending orders will also allow the defender to ignore a flanking penalty and to ignore the loss of a strength point. And there also may be card effects that will modify the loss of points in this phase of the battle. At that point, after all modifiers have been applied, the side that took the most losses in battle loses and must retreat. If there is a tie, the defender wins and the attacker must retreat. And there are other rules that I do not have the time to cover in detail. You have leaders that will allow you to execute special actions, so you have more options. You have supply rules. Units that are out of supply may give victory points to the opponent in case they're destroyed. Also, their actions are limited, and the fight for the supply lines will really be key in many cases. But to talk about the game in general, this is a fantastic game. This is a simply phenomenal game. It may not be love at first sight for everybody, because learning the game may take more than you would imagine for a game that then turns out to be very simple, very smooth, very really very tight. But you have to learn all the little orders and there are little rules here and there. To my group, it took a game just to make sure that we knew how to play the game, that we didn't have to check the rule book or the player aid so often that would kind of like get in the way of enjoying the game. And a second game to get not to learn how to play the game, but to figure out how to play the game well. That is, we started seeing all the subtleties and all the ways in which you can exploit the sequencing of the events and all the bluffing that you can do and how you can use things to your advantage and force the opponent to do certain things. But at that point, everybody was really drawn in. The experience really was extremely immersive and enjoyable. This is a game that I love for several reasons. For the very thick fog of war that it has, more than you have in your regular block war game, and this really emphasizes the factor again of being able to outsmart your opponent, to bluff, because this is really what the game is about. If you bluff well, if you surprise your opponent, then you will win. Because on the other hand, and it works with the bluffing factor, this is a game that has very little random elements. You have the cards, so when you see the cards, you're like, ooh, big randomness. But not really here, not so much, because in many cases, when you enter battle, it is going to be secret selection of actions. You know how many strength points you have, you know there are fortifications and flanking bonuses, you know exactly how this will work, you know the cards that you will play, which one for the combat value, which one for the battle effect. And you do not know what the opponent is going to do, but maybe the opponent knows exactly what he's going to do. So there's no randomness whatsoever. If you decide to draw a card in a battle, or if you find yourself forced to draw a card because you do not have any, that is still a result of the strategy that you're using to budget your cards. You're still choosing to give yourself to randomness. It's very different from being forced to do so. This is a game with a fantastic historical feel. It really depicts different moments of the war in each scenario, and you really have a great sense that you really are seeing these events. It's a great window on the past. I learned a lot about this war that I knew virtually nothing about. This is a great game that I would recommend to non-war gamers and to war gamers. I played it actually only with non-war gamers, so it is perfectly accessible to people that are not usually to conversant with wargaming, it is still a great game that you can play easily. Bottom line, this is a fantastic game, a game that I love, one of the best war games of 2011, and I'm filming this on December 11th, so pretty late in the year. There are a lot of games that I'm comparing this one to, and this is still one of the best ones.